Now, the economy is dominating the headlines again, especially after yesterday's pre-budget statement by the Chancellor, Alistair. Will a 2.5% cut in VAT really be enough to stimulate spending? Is there enough help for families to see them through the worst of the recession? Not to mention businesses, small, medium and large. Here's how Alistair outlined the gloomy scenario to the Commons.
Mr Speaker, my pre-budget statement today is made against a background of economic uncertainty not seen for generations. These are extraordinary, challenging times for the global economy, and they are having an impact on businesses and families right across the world. Mr Speaker, in these exceptional economic circumstances, I want to take fair and responsible steps to protect and support businesses and people now, while putting the public finances on the right path for the future, and that is what I will do today. My central objective is to respond to the consequences of this global recession on our country, both now and in the future, so that we are ready to take full advantage of the recovery in the world economy. My aim is to provide support and protection on families and businesses when they need it most, to maintain our commitment to investing in schools and hospitals and the nation's key infrastructure, and to put in place the measures necessary to ensure sound public finances in the medium term, so that as a country we live within our means. No, not one single initiative, but a comprehensive plan to support families, the business and the economy. And because of the wide-ranging measures I am announcing today and the many strengths of the British economy, I am confident that the slowdown will be shallower and shorter than would have been the case.
So, good news for Newry and Derry, perhaps, as they might expect to welcome more shoppers from the Republic. But what about everyone else? Finance Minister Nigel Dodds is with me. You're very welcome. You have welcomed what the government has done largely in broad terms. You're pleased with what Alistair Darling is saying. Why?
Well, I've welcomed the fact that this will have benefits for Northern Ireland, not least in terms of being able to be much more flexible about the capital programme. We're able to bring forward some £86 million worth of capital expenditure from years 2010, 2011 and bring that forward. That'll be helpful because I've been listening to the construction industry and what they're saying about trying to move things forward more quickly. And also it means extra money in terms of current expenditures of £24 million. So there's direct benefits to the Northern Ireland executive budgets, as well as, of course, the individual benefits in terms of tax and VAT and for small companies. So there are benefits here for Northern Ireland.
Just on the capital spend then, we're talking about sort of public projects, roads, or what specifically here?
Yeah, I mean, under the investment strategy, under capital programme, we're talking about infrastructure projects, whether that be roads, hospitals, schools, whatever, the Public Records Office, for instance, which Gregory Campbell and I were down at yesterday, which is moving ahead. That kind of project, because we are investing a considerable amount this year, next year and the year after in terms of public work. But if we can do more in terms of rolling that out, then let's do it to the maximum possible extent. And this measure that was announced yesterday in the pre-budget report gives me more flexibility to look at ways in which we can do that along with executive colleagues.
How would you address concerns from, say, the business community that this executive is maybe just sitting on its hands a bit and wishing that the difficult decisions could be deferred? Take water charging, a lot of money there being spent effectively to keep deferring that charge. Now, of course, there are people out there who can't perhaps afford the extra charge, but there are many who could. And in the current environment, perhaps that money should be better used elsewhere.
Well, water is an issue that has to be dealt with. I think, just to be clear, in terms of the package that we got last week from the Prime Minister, or the week before that, in terms of the water issue, that was simply making sure that pressures that would otherwise have come onto the executive, because the classification of the water companies don't come onto the executive, that doesn't therefore mean that we're having to spend extra money. It means we're just not going to have money taken out of the system. But that is an issue that we're going to have to consider very, very carefully. We're aware of all the difficult issues in and around water. The fundamental principle is this, that we have made it absolutely clear that we pay for water currently, and therefore there should be no double charging for water. And in the proposals that have come forward, that has been a principle that has been enshrined, and we have to now look at ways in which that matter can be dealt with moving forward. But we've got it deferred this year, it will be deferred next year. And I think in terms of the expenditure and investment that has to go in there, of course that has to go in there. It's how we do that's the key issue.
In terms of the Chancellor's package, when you look at some of the Fleet Street coverage, they're saying this is a defining moment at Westminster. Now you've got Labour saying, yes, let's engage in major public spending, let's borrow to get us out of this recession, and ultimately let's tax the rich. But we've got the Tories saying, no, you should be cutting back on public spending, cutting your cloth, as it were, to fit your resources. I mean, where on that scale now do you sit?
Well, I mean, obviously we're a devolved administration, so we're limited in terms of the fiscal and monetary responses that we can make. But I mean, looking at the situation, and we are obviously extremely involved in all of it because it affects Northern Ireland, there's no doubt that all the advice right across the world, all the major economies, the IMF, the World Bank, everybody is advising strongly that this is the time for a fiscal stimulus. Learning the lessons of the Great Depression, the New Deal, Franklin Delano Roosevelt and all of that, that if you sit back and do nothing, the recession will undoubtedly be longer and deeper and more difficult for families and firms and companies trying to employ people. So I think sitting back and doing nothing is not an option. It remains to be seen how this plays out politically. But I think that economically, all the advice that's coming right across the world, the G20 and the countries that have met have all agreed we need to act now, and therefore I welcome it in those terms.
So maybe wearing your party hat, do you think the Conservatives are on the wrong side of the argument here?
Well, I think the Conservatives, of course, up until a week ago had a completely different policy. They were in favour of matching Labour spending powers. Now they're saying they're not going to do that, and they seem to be of the view that the way through this recession is basically to not really interfere that much in terms of the way forward in terms of spending plans or tax cuts or fiscal stimulus. It runs against the advice of virtually everybody, all countries, all the experts, everything. I mean, it remains to be seen what happens on that. But all I can say is that the Conservative Party approach would appear to be one of basically, let's sit back and ride it out. And I think a lot of people feel that's a very, very dangerous strategy in terms of jobs and hard-pressed families.
Well, when you look at the actual figures for the public sector borrowing requirement next year, it's going to be 90 billion more than was initially envisaged. These are staggering figures, and surely this can't be good news for Northern Ireland, which effectively each year has to go to the Chancellor and say, can we have our subvention, please? Because he's going to look much less favourably on every demand that you may have for extra resources and money.
Look, all of this is a very, very difficult problem. The severe economic downturn, the recession that we're now facing across the world, arising out of the financial problems that we're facing, leads to terrible problems, whatever way you look at it. Because the alternative to doing the borrowing, which it leads to problems, you're right to identify this has got to be addressed in future years, but the alternative to that is to then say, well, we don't take any measures to try to stimulate the economy now, we don't go on with our spending plans, or we cut back on those spending plans, and everybody's telling us that that's exactly the wrong thing to do, that you've got to try to stimulate the economy. So whatever you do, there are problems attached because of the nature of this downturn. I mean, all I hear from Assembly members, I have to say, and MLAs is bring forward the capital spending programme. Go on ahead and deliver more of that. So I'm getting severe pressure, and I think it's the right thing to respond to that, to go out there and spend public money on infrastructure works. Now, if anyone in the Assembly is standing up and saying, I don't want to do that, we don't want to do that, they should say that now and make that clear. But I think the overwhelming evidence is that that is the right approach.